Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am sorry we have not met last week because of the too much, commitment I handled in the department. So I'm very sorry. So I decided, we're going to have the class online so that you will not miss this one. I also learned that the examination is coming up next week, so we may have this one as our last lecture so that I will allow you to focus on your studies. Though the latest lectures we are having are not going to be part of the exams. I already set out the questions and sent it to the coordinator. So most of the questions are going to affect the earlier lectures we had with you. But notwithstanding, we still need to have the lecture because the whole aim of the study is to increase your knowledge. So today we are going to talk about international institutions and global economic governance. The lecture is going to look at the influence, the role these kind of institutions, play at the global level to stabilize trade, economic development, financial, exchanges, and what have you, globally. The intervention of these institutions, is really helping. Without them, there will be no development at all because some countries are already developed while others are developing, some are even underdeveloped. So it is these institutional interventions that allow countries that are developing to continuously developing, and those that are underdeveloped to make an effort to develop themselves gradually. So we're going to start with the introduction. The global economic governance refers to the system of rules, institutions, and processes that regulate international economic relations, including trade, finance, and development. So most of these are global economic governance that handled by these institutions mostly aim at balancing trade, financial exchanges, and development across and economic development across number of countries. So the major objectives is to promote economic stability across countries. Like I mentioned earlier on, some countries are developed by far com- compared to others. So it is these interventions that allows others to catch up, to also develop. Facilitate international trade. There are some embargo, some policies at the country level that try to stagnate, international trade. So it is the intervention of this institution that allows for free movement of goods and services across number of countries. Even countries that under normal circumstances cannot be able to take their goods to other countries can be able to do this with the intervention of these institutions. And then support development and poverty reductions. It's another key objectives of this institution. For example, World Bank. World Bank is doing a lot in trying to eradicate poverty across number of less developed countries. They manage financial crisis. There are countries that are battling with inflations and so many other financial crises. And it is some of these institutions like IMF, the World Bank, they are helping in balancing this crisis. And then ensure fair competition and cooperation among countries so that each country can benefit from international trade and exchanges. So co-actors in this framework are multilateral institutions such as World Bank, IMF, the national governments, the government of each of most member countries or most participating countries. Each country that partake in the international trade or businesses, are part of the national government here. They have policies, they have strategies that they use to make sure they regulate and manage international trade to their advantage. And then we have regional blocs like EU, ECOWAS, and so many other Asian, not Asian countries. And then we have private sector and civil societies, NGOs, multinational enterprises, and what have you. They also, participate and influence in this area. So the major international institutions that we are going to talk about, include World Bank or World Trade Organization, WTO. World Trade Organization is the principal international institutions governing global trade rules. The main aim of this organization is to regulate trade, to make sure trade is done, favorably across number of countries. This organization was established in 1995, succeeding the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade (GATT). Because of some limitations of GATT, this World Trade Organization was established to take care of some of the deficiency issues discovered in the GATT. And then headquarters, Geneva, Switzerland. Membership, more than 160 countries. Core purpose, ensure that international trade flows smoothly, predictably, and freely. Like I mentioned earlier on, there are national government that have policies, strategies that limit inflow of some other countries' goods or services. So with the intervention of the World Trade Organization, it provides a kind of level playing ground for each country to participate in international business. So it's one of their core purpose. And their mandate, regulate global trade rules, ensure smooth flow of international trade across a number of countries. And then core functions, administer trade agreement between countries, serve as a forum for negotiation because of trade wars and what have you that happens between countries. World Trade Organization serve as a medium where negotiation is reached among conflicting countries. Resolve trade dispute, monitor national trade policies. So these are some of the core functions of the World Trade Organization. Key principles: most favored nations, that is, they ensure equal treatment among members' countries, whether developed or developing or emerging or developing countries. This institution, try to make sure there is equal treatment among members' country, meaning a developing country, can be able to transact with a developed country, like vice versa. And national treatment, imported goods treated like domestic goods. And part of the mandate of the World Trade Organization is to make sure that goods are freely, traded and transported across number of countries as if they are originated from the receiving countries. And then trade liberalization, to free up some of the embargoes, barriers and restrictions put forward by a number of countries to limit the inflow of goods and services into their countries. And then, of course, there are some criticism in the level against these institutions. There is a perception of bias toward developed countries. So most of the less developed countries, discover that or perceive that this institution is biased towards developed countries. Of course, there are international policies, that always favor the strong, economically strongly country. And of course, you can't have a situation without this kind of thing. But at least the institution is really helping, even though there are some issues. But the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and the limited flexibility for developing economy. Because of their economic strengths and influence in the membership. So these countries may find it, are not flexible to do like international trade with some other, especially developed countries. So the next one is United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. This one is part of the United Nations. It's part of the United Nations that is created purposely to take care of the less developed countries, to make sure they carry them along in international business and what have you, in the areas where they have greatest disadvantages. So, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development is a permanent intergovernmental body of the United Nations established in 1964 The primary aim of promoting the integration of developing countries into global economy in a fair and sustainable manner. Their headquarters is in Switzerland. Membership, almost all United Nations member states are part of the UNCTAD membership. And then focus is on trade, investment, finance, and development. These are the key areas for development for most countries. So this association organization, focus in this area so that they can facilitate, development for the less developed countries. And then key mandate, promote development, friendly integration into global economy. Their functions, policy, research, and analysis. They conduct research, they analyze countries in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, and then recommend the appropriate, interventions that will take care of their issues. And then technical assistance to developing countries in terms of technology, in terms of strategical, assistance that will help countries to develop. Advocacy for fair trade policies. And then focus area, trade inequalities. They try to balance inequality with regards to international trade. And then debt sustainability. They try to make sure countries are encouraged to access loans for development and be able to pay back their loans to their economic activities. And then technology transfer. They also help to provide to facilitate technology transfer from the developed or originator countries to most of these developing or underdeveloped countries. And then the next one is IMF, International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund is a global financial institution established in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. It aims to ensure global monetary stability, facilitate international trade, and provide financial assistance to member countries facing economic difficulties. Even here in Nigeria, there are a number of times IMF, bail us out. It helps us with loans and some expert advice that help Nigeria to stand on their feet. So these are the major areas where they assist. Mandate ensure global financial stability. They help in terms of financial, assistance, advice, and consultancy, and they sometimes, most times they provide loans to countries for development. So they ensure global financial stability in this way. And then key functions, surveillance of global economy. They monitor economic development and progress of each member countries to make sure there is a kind of stable economic financial stability. And then financial assistance, loans to countries, and technical support on macroeconomic policies. They support providing some advice, consultancy that relates to macroeconomic policies that will have a kind of multiplier effects on the country's economic development. And then most of the instruments they use in their activities or reach out are mostly like structural adjustment programs. It's a kind of recommendations to most of the countries. It's part of the condition they normally attach for loans. Whenever a country goes for a loan, they recommend so that that country can be able to pay back the loan and correct some of the financial issues they may be having in the countries to do one or two things that they may be suggested to do. For example, common components include removal of subsidy. If you could remember, there was a subsidy removal in Nigeria by this current administration, and all these are some of the recommendations by these institutions, IMF, to remove subsidies so that the country can be able to save a lot of money, that they can pay back their loans and use the money for some developmental project. Trade liberalization, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and the regulations of some public-owned institutions. These are the areas, and then balance of payment support. They also, provide loans whenever there is a deficit or balance of payment. They help country by providing the deficit, balancing the deficit in terms of loans and some other financial support. And then, of course, there are some criticisms leveled against the institutions. For example, conditionalities may restrict domestic policy autonomy. For example, subsidy removal in Nigeria was not too good for us because I doubt much if any Nigerian can tell the dividend or any positive yield that or anything that Nigerian benefit from the subsidy removal. Ordinarily, Nigeria should not be borrowing money because it has already stopped paying subsidy. But Nigeria is borrowing more money than it was borrowing before now. So a common Nigerian may not be able to see the effect of subsidy removal. So in this regard, the recommendation is not helping the country. And there are so many of such kind of recommendations that are not to our advantage. And then social consequences in borrowing countries. And sometimes they offer loans when you have an issue that should be addressed using some policy domestically, but they will suggest a loan. That loan may, and you know what loans do to does to people. Personally, if you are giving a loan, you will be under that lender's obligations. You understand? So this is how it gets some criticisms. And then World Bank. World Bank is an international financial institution established in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. Its primary mandate is to reduce poverty and support economic development by providing financial and technical assistance to developing countries. Just like IMF, and World Bank is also one of these multilateral institutions that try to balance, financial inequality and issues globally. So the mandate promote economic development and poverty reductions. Component, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, International Development Association, IDA. So these are the two divisions of the bank. One division is meant for developmental projects across a number of countries. And then another one is aimed at the International Development Association. So the major functions in structural financing. They provide finance for physical development in most of the countries. And then the development policy advice. They provide expert advice on how countries can engineer development in their countries. Capacity building for leaders and gatekeepers in most of the countries to take care of their issues and bring past development in their countries. And then global trade rules and dispute. Trade rules framework governed primarily by World Trade Organization agreement. For example, there is GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, that focuses on goods only. We try to balance the exchange of goods across a number of countries. And then there is GATS, which focuses on service. And then there is TRIPS, which focuses on intellectual property, such as patent, copyright, trademarks, etc. So countries, that exchange, services is going to be taken care of by GATS, General Agreement on Trade in Services. Services such as financial services, education, ICT, and so many other services. And then trade dispute mechanism. Countries bring dispute to World Trade Organization panels. They have a panels that look into issues. So when there is a trade dispute or between countries, it is this panel that look into it and try to mediate to make sure the countries, relate with each other for international transactions. Building rulings ensure compliance, and they also have some rules that make sure that strictly, force countries to adhere to some of the rules for international trade and exchanges. Example issues, tariff barriers, subsidies, dumping practices. These are some of the issues that call for most of the dispute, resolution and what have you. Most of the times, countries, use some policies that are damaging to other countries for international exchanges. So they normally, bring this up for resolution. And the contemporary challenges, trade wars, e.g., U.S.-China tensions, U.S.-Israel, Iran, wars. All these are affecting international trade. And then protectionism versus globalization. Two opposing, phenomenon. Globalization is trying to abolish all the barriers, all the blocks, all the restrictions that will limit, international trade, while protectionism is aiming at protecting the implant industry and the countries from import and what have you. So it's two opposing something, and two of these, affect international business. And digital trade governance, how to manage, digital. Digital is something that is on the internet, it is on the air, so you can coordinate, you can do something while you are somewhere else in the world. So it's another area that is very challenging for controls and management. And then the next is balance of payment. The balance of payment are record all economic transactions between a country and the rest of the world. So balance of payment is the account that record all the economic transactions that happen between countries. And this balance of payment has three categories of account: current account, capital account, and financial account. Current account, trade in goods and services, income transfers, and what have you. And in capital account, capital transfer, payment for constructions and so many other things. And then financial account, investment, reserves, FDI, investment are recorded in financial account. So each category of this account, record these transactions, and at the end of the day, it results in balance or deficit, balance of payment. So this equilibrium, and the way of managing this balance of payment, sometimes country, reaches or incurs, this equilibrium, depending on whether their import or export, outweigh one another. For example, deficit situation is when import is greater than export, meaning country, import more than what it exports. This is a situation where a country will be at greatest, disadvantage, because it will affect their foreign, their currency, and so many other things in relation to international currencies and what have you. And then there is situation of a surplus where a country, export more than what it imports. This indicate, self-sufficiency, strength in productions and development in technology and ICT and what have you. So this imbalance create a pressure on exchange rate, because it will make, if for example your import is higher than your export, it will make your currency, less valuable. You understand? And it also depletes your reserves. And then economic instability. There will be economic instability because it will cause a lot of issues. Like, for example, the current issue we are facing with regards to our country's strength in relation to dollar, about 135 naira to $1. That is too much. If, for example, is maybe 200 or 180 to $1, it will be a favorable condition for Nigerians. We buy so many things, that we import at a cheaper rate. But the case is worse because our import is higher than our export. And then adjustment mechanism. So how countries, must, at times, try to, adjust this equilibrium, deficit or surplus. Most of the times countries use currency devaluation. Currency devaluation is a process where a country, devalue its currency in relation to an international currency like dollar, like what Nigerian government have been doing over the time, the devaluation. The main aim of this devaluation is to discourage imports, because if a country devalues its money, it's going to make imports very expensive. Any imported, goods or service very expensive, because the value of the local currency will be so valuable compared to the foreign currency. Like for example, what is the case right now in Nigeria? What is happening right now in Nigeria? Because of this devaluation of currencies and what have you, the cost of imported vehicle, used vehicle, is by far, beyond a common people range. In some years back, not more than 5 years, you could buy a car that is being sold at 10 million now at 2 million naira. But because of this currency devaluation now, it's too expensive for common people to. And so that, the mechanism there is to make import very expensive so that people will focus on the local product and services. And that will help to boost the export against the import. And then monetary policy and fiscal policy. Sometimes country may use tools like interest rate, taxations, so many other monetary policies to control this equilibrium. And then IMF assistance. Sometimes, IMF, reach out for expert advice on how country can reverse the disequilibrium, or maybe for providing some loans to take care of the depleting, foreign reserves. Then exchange rate regimes. Exchange rate is the exchange of foreign currency with your, especially if you are into international trade or transactions. If you are traveling to outside, you may want to convert your currency to maybe dollar so that you can be able to spend it wherever you may go. So that exchange rate, has a way that they come up with the value. There is fixed, floating, and managed floating. Fixed exchange rate is a situation where a certain amount of local currency is pegged against a foreign currency, like what we have right now. For example, 135 naira to $1 is fixed. You understand? And then there is floating, where the value of the currency is determined by the process of demand supply in the market. Meaning, as people import more, they will demand for more foreign exchange to make payment. And that will put too much burden and that will determine the value. And as we have less import and more export, we are likely going to receive more forex into our country. And that will make it so much in the country to the extent that the value goes down. And then there is managed floating. It's a hybrid of fixed and floating, where the government, use a fixed mechanism, but sometimes or from time to time they will be adjusting to accommodate some of the issues that is happening within the country. Just like what happens in Nigeria, from time to time they adjust the fixed, currency, they peg against USD. Then exchange rate determinations. Exchange rate, is determined divide demand for foreign currency by the supply of foreign currency. That will give you the exchange rate. This is based on the floating, exchange rate regime. And then influencing factors. What are the factors that affect, foreign exchange? Inflation rate. When you have inflation, it makes the value of your currency less compared to the foreign currency. So that can affect, foreign exchange. Likewise, interest rate. Interest rate, can also weaken your currency if it is very high. And then political instability can also, affect the exchange rate. The more stable a country is in terms of politics and what have you, the more their currency is likely going to be stable for exchanges. And then speculative activities. So there are some people who benefit from the foreign exchange fluctuations and what have you. So those kind of people also affect the foreign exchange. Sometimes they buy more of foreign currency with the anticipation that its value is going to rise in the future. And that will create a scarcity, and then it will rise its value. So this is also affecting the foreign exchange. The implication of exchange rate choices. This rate, is causing stability, but it's less flexible. It's not flexible, so you cannot modify it to suit the circumstances a country is going through. An floating rate is flexible, but it's volatile. It is susceptible to slight change in the economic, macroeconomic, indicators and what have you. So the choice will be based on the policy of the government and how it want to control its foreign reserves. The implication for emerging and developing countries. What are the implications of all these institutions, governance, and all these mechanisms we have talked about? What are the implications for emerging and developing countries? Then opportunities, access to global markets, with the intervention of these multilateral institutions, a small country or emerging country or developing country can access global market because there will be a kind of hedge-free uh, uh, situation for international business. So a country that ordinarily cannot transact with another country, but because of this streamlined, situation provided by this, institution, this country can be able to partake in the international trade. And development financing, like World Bank, is also helping. Crisis support, IMF, through their loans, structural adjustment programs, and what have you. And then trade integration, World Trade Organization also help. All these are opportunities for emerging and developing economy. And then, of course, there are some challenges, vulnerability to global shocks, because this country, depend on these institutions. So once there is economic issues in most of the strong member countries, it's likely going to spill over to these emerging or developing countries. And then, of course, the issue of debt dependency is another problem that may affect the emerging or developing countries. Then on equal bargaining power, some countries, have very strong currency. They have strong economic position in these organizations, and for that they have higher bargaining power compared to these developing or emerging countries. And then conditionalities affecting sovereignty, like for example, IMF loan. Most of these structural adjustment programs are tied to loans offered by IMF. So whenever they are giving you this loan, they provide these conditions, and these conditions are affecting country sovereignty because some of these conditions are a disadvantage to those countries, are damaging to these countries, but still they will have no options because they need these loans. So for that reason, they will be implementing policies that are not good to the common people within the country, just like what is happening right now in Nigeria. We have number of tax, and every day they are creating a way to tax people, to get money from people. While the income is not increasing, you understand. The cost of living is increasing by day. There is no policy that will, like for example, the current war that is going on between in US, Israel, and Iran that affected the oil price. Something could be done by the Nigerian government. So subsidize, also do whatever it takes to make sure the shock is not felt in the country because it's a well-producing country. But because of all these, conditionalities, they will not do this kind of a thing. So it will affect the well-being of people in the country. And then strategic response. So how does this country, respond to this kind of challenges we talk about? Vulnerability, debt dependency on equal bargaining power, or conditionalities. So the best strategy is to diversification of the economy. Most of these, emerging and developing countries are trying to diversify their economy so that they can be able to participate in or take advantage in some areas. And then strengthening regional cooperation, e.g. African or continental free trade areas, institutional capacity building, and negotiation of favorable trade agreement in the membership, like in World Trade Organizations, this country can go for favorable terms when it comes to trade and transactions. And then critical evaluation of all these international institutions and governance and policies. There is a debate at the global level that try to look at these institutions. So the debate is, are global institutions neutral? That is, do they have effect or positive or negative effect on countries? So the proponent of this global institution, maintain that this institution, promote order and cooperations, while the critics, maintain that reflect interests of powerful economy. They maintain that this institution are out there to protect the interests of the strong economy. So that is how the global debate is centered around these institutions. If you look at their activities, you may see some element of truth in this. And then emerging trends, rise of South-South cooperation. And because of these, issues that relate, that come from these institutions, World Bank, IMF, these challenges, these countries, some countries are coming up with their own institution that will help them to develop regional development. One of them is rise of South-South corporations. Reforms calls for IMF and World Bank governance. So there is number of agitations and advocacy trying to reform IMF and World Bank, modus operandi governance. And then increase the role of digital economy governance. And another important trend that is changing this global institution dominance is the digital economy. Digital economy is allowing the developing and emerging countries to have some level of economic participation and control at the global business. So in summary, this is all we can talk. We talk about the global economic governance. It's anchored on institutions such as World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and UNCTAD. These bodies shape trade, finance, and development trajectories, particularly for emerging economies. While they offer opportunity for integration and support, they also present structural challenges that require strategic policy responses. So this is all we can take this lecture. So if there is any question, you can reserve your questions so that you can even post them to a WhatsApp platform so that we can discuss about them. So once again, I'm really apologizing for my inability to show up for my classes previous weeks. This is because I was too busy working on undergraduate results and some other committees, within the university. Thank you so much. Till we meet again.